Hello, marhaba, and welcome to Dreaming Live الحب الحب. Welcome to a new episode and possibly a new series. So, in the same way, because I like to dream in series, as some of you may know, and in the same way that I did an episode with Mike Banks of the Underground Resistance, I putting it in a series with two of the greatest jazz artists. One was a tribute to Alice Coltrane with her daughter Michelle, and the other was Marshall Allen of the Sandwell Orchestra. So I did those, and then released the Mike Banks episode to depict techno as high-tech jazz, and both of which are a result of their history. In the same way, when I did this, now I want to do with another. My vision is to have a series with another techno artist, equally amazing techno artist, who just by being who he is was able to manifest a completely different history. So Regis, I think, by being, I can hear the whole history of England. I can hear the industrialization of the 70s. I can hear the end of rock. I can hear punk. I can hear post-punk. I can hear industrial, obviously, synthesizer music. The whole. So I say dreaming live starts with being, and from being we dream, and from dreaming we manifest and we create. So Regis, by being, was able to manifest this history. So hopefully the series will depict that. I already confirmed the next artist, who's an amazing artist. I'm not sure who the artists after that are, but I'm also a musical schizophrenic, as Lydia Lunch said, so this all might change in the end, but this is the vision now, and I wanted to release this and not wait. So I'm going to start with a song by the British Murder Boys, who are Regis and Surgeon, and I think this song will show how Regis' techno really depicts his history. And then my interview with him. I want to just also say thank you so much to him for agreeing to do this interview. It's a great honor of mine, and I'm really grateful. Okay, speak soon. Much love. Okay, I just got there. How are you? Exciting, your album and the video that you sent me. It's really exciting.
Yeah. No, it was. I mean, all that was done. It was all done pre-lockdown. Obviously, that was done in 2019. So I think in so many ways I was very prophetic. I actually predicted the pandemic. So
Oh yeah. Did you make stuff during the pandemic too, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think I create within my mind. I mean, I'm not purposely creating or making stuff for any purpose, but I think. Yeah, I mean, I think I constantly always go to, even when I go to sleep, I'm thinking of creating something, so it was not nothing with any purpose, but, it was definitely, that's always in my head, definitely,
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I also wanted to talk later how you say, like, there's no plan B for you. It's all about creating, really, and dream.
Yeah, well, it completely. Well, it really. Well, it's been like that all my life, really. I mean, for better or worse, that's been the way that for me, it really is that way. And yeah, and it was just with everything that's happened recently. Yeah, it hasn't really. To be honest, it hasn't really affected me. In many ways, that it's affected other people. I think. So yeah, I've always very much ghosted my life. Really, I mean, I've always lived in places, lots of parts of my life, I've lived in places where I can't actually speak the language. It's very much like what Beckett did. It was just, it's this weird thing about being an alien in a different country, in a different environment. And I just walk around very much as a interloper and observing stuff, and that's what I did that for a long time in Berlin. And I've also done that in other countries, it doesn't matter if you speak the language or not, you're constantly this alien. And I pretty much felt at home recently, the last year and a half. Of course, it's been in other ways, it's been terrible seeing what's happening to people in general, and
Yeah, I feel exactly like you because I'm not living in my home, and I've lived in Canada for almost a big chunk of my adult life for this dream of a passport, of getting the passport. And I'm really, really close, but it's never like close enough, but I'm really close to getting it and finally being able to go home. But I always felt like an outsider, but at the same time, this and also I worked in elder care, and I had a really intense job. I was in I had a very intense position during the pandemic, but other than that, socially and stuff, it was the same for me. It was just an excuse to be me.
It's no, I completely understand that. For me, I think the difference for me is, I mean, it's probably, well, it's actually not like, because you sound like you have a very intense situation with your job, and it's but for me personally, because I work, I mean, in my weekends is when I really work. Usually during the week, during the normal times, people are at work, and I can just go about my business normally. I can go to things like cinema or the park, and it's pretty much quiet because everybody's at work. But now lots of people have, the new way of living. Lots of people work from home, and yeah, so it's quite interesting. It was interesting for me seeing a lot of, recalibrating my life. Oh, wow, there's lots of people in my space and my time now. Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I find that quite interesting, getting used to that, really. But it's just the way everything is, getting used to certain, and that's the way it should be, I think, with life,
Yeah, that's what actually my Syrian friend, he told me at the beginning of the pandemic. He's like, the most important thing is to adapt. And then I was working through the intensity and all the madness, I kept repeating the word, we have to adapt to this now. We have to adapt. Because in the beginning, I always when is this over? When is this over? And then I decided that thinking this way, but although as I said, socially, I wanted to add when you said that in a way you lived in your own world, this helps to create. I think being an outsider helps to us to envision how, I think creation comes from when we have our own world,
Well, it's essential. I think, most of us who work in any sort of creative field are delusional. And it's very, great. I mean, for me, I think I'm still convinced I'm the greatest 1960s rock star the world has ever seen. But the reality might be different. But I still believe that to some degree. And I still have to. And when I live within my own head, of course, that's fantastic. Of course, I'm in touch with reality. I can go about and function relatively well, and in the real world, that's not. I can get on aeroplanes. I can speak to people in shops and do all of that stuff. But the reality is we're quite delusional, and that's really. But I don't know if I don't know if that's the correct word, but it's the only word I can find at the moment, really, and that's pretty much it, really. But then,
I've come to accept. I embrace the imagination because I think that it's not just this. I think through imagination, really we create a world. But in this world, ideas come for the real world, and like Sun Ra. I'm saying he's from Saturn. Sure. It's a fulfilling way to live this way.
Oh, that's amazing. It's completely true. I mean, what was that great thing was Sun Ra went to a gig. I think who was it? Who I can't remember. It was Ornette Coleman or someone. It was somewhere in the Village in New York in the '60s, and Sun Ra went to see Ornette Coleman. It might have been somebody else, but anyway, he went to see a jazz gig in the Village, and I think it was Ornette Coleman said, "Hey, oh my God, what are you doing here?" And he said, "Oh no, I often come downtown to see gigs." But Ornette Coleman said, "No, what are you doing here on planet Earth?" And I always thought that was fantastic. So yeah, not just you come down to the Village to watch a gig. What are you doing here on planet Earth? And that's I mean, he's the best example, I think. There's some other great examples in music, but Sun Ra is a great example of living the purest life you can through art.
Yeah, I mean, all of Afrofuturism that came, especially after Sun Ra and even Drexciya, a lot of that came out of the power and the realm of imagination, even if it's just to imagine a better world, even if it's just there's a beautiful freedom that can be achieved in these realms that end up manifesting and even changing this world.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you're talking about, especially Afrofuturism, especially from Black America as well, it might be rooted in something completely different as well, looking from an escape from this world and creating something on another planet. I mean, it's probably not something that I think, even though we can appreciate that, I think it is rooted in something else. I mean, as in Jeff Mills in particular, who is, I mean, I feel Jeff Mills really is the real heir apparent to sort of someone like Sun Ra,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
In some sort of many ways. I mean, people, he's so uncompromising. It's that pursuit, the purity of the original idea, and that never waning. I really like that.
But like you said about like Jeff Mills being attached, like kind of like continuation of Sun Ra. When I interviewed Mike Banks, I put it in a series where I did first a tribute to Alice Coltrane with her daughter, and then I talked to Marshall Allen of the Sun Ra Orchestra, and then I did the Mike Banks episode. So to contextualize that as like just an extension in maybe the values or ethos or something. But but similarly, like I told you, and I don't know, but like I thought, because in your, like when you made techno, you also had your own. And beyond techno, but you had your own texture and aesthetics and all of this. And I think that it's like it just passed through your stories and where the context that you grew up in. And I think you can hear that in the.
Well, I think for myself with techno, I just saw it as an opportunity for myself, because I knew my limitations. I knew what I could and couldn't do. I mean, I was pretty much. I found it very, very interesting. It allowed me to make instrumental electronic music, which was great. And not only that, it allowed me a platform. So in some sort of way, I attach myself to it. When people sort of say, "Well, what do you like about techno?" And I say, well, I'll always say, well, I don't really like techno. I never really did historically. There was a very brief moment in the early 90s that I thought this was really quite exciting. And we were part of that movement as well that carried on from that, because I really felt we were at the cusp of something very new and exciting. We didn't necessarily have to be anything, but it was some sort of momentum that was happening, and it was almost music without tradition at that particular point as well. It didn't really sort of adhere to the rock and roll thing. It wasn't what electronic music had been. It really sort of rearranged the DNA of music. There was no need for a first chorus. You didn't need a band. That's what electronic music did. But I think techno or dance music took it a little bit further, and then it sort of you had this. It was the very utilitarian approach to it. It was very faceless. You made a slab of music for a moment of time that fitted into that was potentially there to fit into something that for a night, for instance, or in a mix, or it was. I found that very, very interesting. They exist as pieces of music, but they also exist as something that could exist as something else. in a way that music never had done before. It was all about songs before, and where this was part of a
like hypnosis.
It's hypnotica, and I found that really, really interesting. And to be involved with music then at that point was really, really exciting, because then of course I could apply my own influences into that as well. I could everything that I was informed by outside of music, I could bring into what I did. Because I thought, it has. Young kids do, or not, or whatever, however old I was at the time. I was just so assured of myself that I liked the greatest music in the world, and nobody else knew a thing about it. And I was quantifiably better than anybody else, and no one had ever heard of anything. It was that delusional that this feeds into everything, and I'm sure everybody's like that.
Yeah, because you fall in love with these things. I always say, I like the ideas or the visions. I fall in love with them, like falling in love with a human or any. It's like I'm in love with them, or the music that I like.
It's true, but it's not just music though. I was involved. It was, in fact, music was secondary to me in some sort of way. I fell in love with everything about
exactly.
Rock and roll. Rock and roll. Let's for the sake of rock and roll. I fell in love with the image. I felt in love what it did to me. I fell in love with the potential. The way it inspired me, and of course, the music was a beautiful soundtrack to all of it. That just gelled it all together. And that was, I think, a very the idea of it. I fell in love with the idea of it, which is really important.
So that's the thing. Like you were pretty much, I think, born between the end of the industrialization of Britain and what it is now, a very big financial IT service sector, in this vacuum between both, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of crazy. I mean, I was born in 1970, which, to be honest, has never really seemed that long ago to me, but it obviously is now. But
it was just before the recession, after the boom.
Yeah, it was after the. Well, I think, to be honest,
or just
from what my mum tells me, my uncles, or England was post-war. England was apocalyptic. Really, it was really difficult. It was as if we lost the war, and we're paying huge debts back to America. And we're still a lot of food was rationed, especially in the 50s. I mean, when people think of the 50s and stuff, you look to America, and it was the boom, golden age of America. It's when it was boom, and they had everything. In England, it was pretty much the dark ages, and that did continue.
Well into the 80s, right? Or even
I think it continued to the 80s, to be honest. The only real glimmer of hope, though, which links into what we're saying, what happened in England in the 60s, was when, with music, the whole especially with the Beatles, what happened with them, and with the working classes especially, and it was all of a sudden, because post Beatles or post rock and roll, England, there was no such thing as teenagers. Teenagers didn't exist in the 40s, really. This is what we all have to remember. We take this for granted. People became 14 and then they became adults straight away. So America really did afford us, and especially through rock and roll as well. And it was music. It was almost the gateway for the working classes or the poorer people to get into art. An art, something that had previously been, denied them. Art was something that was in galleries. It was something that the upper classes did. And also what music did as well in the UK, in England, especially with the Beatles and the Stones and stuff like that, it was all of a sudden, it threw down the distinction between the rich and the poor. We were no longer, tipping our hats to the rich and everything. We're actually then telling them, well, you're just idiots, and we're far superior to you. We're better than you. We make better music, and it was that's I always found interesting about music, especially when people talk about Elvis and they speak the Beatles. Well, I don't really like their music. I said, well, no, they didn't change music. They changed the world. There's absolutely no way we would be speaking now if Elvis hadn't gone into Sun Studios in Memphis and recorded. There's that we would not be living that life, and that's absolutely 100% sure. The life we are now,
I totally agree. It's absolutely not just about music.
It's not about music. The Beatles as well. And when you look at the Beatles, then they took it even further. It was disobedience. It was working class disobedience. If you look at their early interviews in America, they were just taking the piss. Americans hadn't seen that before because they were just used to standardized Q&A. They weren't used to these people being cheeky back and messing with the art form, and that's really, really important. I mean, and then it goes on from then, and then we can look into the Velvets and the Stones and all the amazing great bands from the Door, and then onwards, and the list goes on and on and on, and then obviously with that in mind, you fall in love with the art form.
I wanted actually to just say something back about the point before when you were saying it wasn't just the music. Like in those days, like it was like record shops played a big part. Zines, like there was fanzines, like text inside records, like even like squats and all that played part into the culture, right? Like it was all like this kind of exchange of information, places where people exchange information outside of the radio, and it was all.
Well, it's true, but if you think about it, that exchange of information with those fanzines or the music press, it only happened once every 2 weeks. So if you think now, every single second you're getting bits of new information that, I don't know, Coil of some other nonsense Coil reissue that shouldn't even be reissued.
I'm so sick. Some
disgrace. Someone else has found some archive tapes of Coil. You know that in 3 seconds. 2 seconds later, someone's reissuing something else. 5 seconds later, someone's doing a live stream in 5 seconds. We're constantly bombarded. Now, the difference back then was you didn't get the music press happened every 2 weeks. So, I mean, I used to read Sounds. I never really read the NME because that was for hippies. So I read Sounds and, maybe Melody Maker, magazines called Zigzag, that I think even came out monthly. So within that 2 weeks, all the real important information came together.
Yeah.
And if you think, it's almost impossible. Could you imagine if the internet just talking about the music press now, if we saved everything up for every 2 weeks and on one day every 2 weeks, all the information came out, and that's how it was. And that was really, really the way, that was really the way it was. Now, the interesting thing about England was, because England's so small, and why it really, because it's so small, these little things, you could read the NME, you could say, oh God, look, this somebody in Manchester's got a tape I'm going to send off for that. They'll write you back. Then all of a sudden they'll connect you with someone in your town. In many ways, England was the proto-internet in those days because everyone was so close and they could get information very, very quickly. And that's what was really, really interesting. But it was still very regional. It was so regional then because, a band from, I'm talking about a band from Birmingham or the West Midlands sounded like a band from Birmingham or the West Midlands. If they came from Birmingham, you'd probably like to sound like the Specials or not the Special came from Birmingham, but the West Midlands, or you sound like the Beat, or you sound like Early Dexys, or you sound like a heavy metal. If a band came from Manchester, it'd sound like a Manchester band. If a band came from Sheffield, it would sound like Sheffield. Now you can get a band from Buenos Aires who do it in an absolutely amazing version of a band from Manchester. So nothing's regional anymore.
Yes, but this is why I mean, like, I hear like the story of Britain in your music or something, or parts of, not of course not the whole story, but I do hear this kind of the deindustrialization. Obviously I hear like the ethos, the do-it-yourself, almost anarchist, that was also prevalent, right? Do-it-yourself was very big in those days. Like people were trying to press their own, even distribute their own. And like I remember hearing from Rough Trade that Jeff Travis saying like even the distribution, the cartel and stuff was very important to this culture because it created a network in England.
I mean, Jeff Travis is kind of almost central to that because you could literally walk into the shop in Ladbroke Grove, have 300 singles, he'd buy them off you, which give you the money back instantly, and he'd have them sold in 3 days that have gone everywhere, and that includes the mainland Europe and probably America as well. So that was pretty amazing. So what happened? There was a lot of effort required in those days to make a record for one, press it up for two, and then get it out there. and then getting the money to recoup the money to do another one. There was a lot of effort. Even to buy synthesizers was a big effort. I remember when I bought my first I bought my first synthesizer in 1985, and I remember buying it. It was £250. It was such a lot of money. I mean, it was fucking such a lot of money for me. And I remember having to walk through the guitar department of the record shop in Birmingham, with everybody looking at you, knowing where you're going to, what are you doing that, and going into the sort of synth, the small room that was, and buying that, and it was almost, you had to run the gauntlet through the rock guitar place, because they were looking at you like, what the fuck?
Didn't the Slits like break the gear of Throbbing Gristle because it was like synthesizer music, or what, like it was like not, it was a shame, but like you said, it was the edge of something new.
Well, it's totally at the edge of something. But, we talk about Throbbing Gristle in terms of like now, and you would just assume, well, you go back there, everybody knew about Throbbing Gristle, but it wasn't true.
No, of course not. I don't. Even when I was young, when I liked them, not everyone liked them.
It was impossible. I mean, when I was really young, I only really bought my first Throbbing Gristle record in 1985 when Mute reissued them. You couldn't buy Throbbing Gristle records before that. They were not available. Not only were they not available, they weren't really spoken about really widely. It goes for lots of things as well. The way that history is told things now for us is very much bite-sized, but the reality is quite different.
Yeah.
Things like even, it's just kind of weird. Like people, of course, now things like Joy Division are very much revered, and rightly so, for their first two albums. But I can remember at school, it was old-fashioned. People, you don't like that, it's old-fashioned. I'm into others. It was almost, because it was very much from the rockist kind of thing. It was that, you don't like that music in the 70s, But of course now the way that we view history is quite different, and it's really, really funny, you see, the way that people talk about music now. Well, hang on, that's not actually the way it was.
But was there at least enough support, or did you have self-doubt, or how? Oh
no, because I never had self-doubts.
Okay, good. Yeah.
No, this is 100%, and it doesn't really, and it's certainly not arrogance, because if you ever, or ego, mate. Well, maybe
it's love. It's love for your ideas.
It is seeing it through to that kind of, I think I really, really I just wanted it so much. You want it so much, and you just want a certain type of thing so much, and it's I just found that so intoxicating, and that's what I found the most important thing. And of course, by the time 1985, synthesizer music it was old-fashioned. It was dated, Yeah. It was a dirty word, even though, because from the initial boom in the early '80s, from the great bands that were there, who really took it from the clubs into the charts, that I loved. By 1984, it had really waned off. Synthesizer music had become old-fashioned and almost a dirty term again as well. So I was always at the wrong gate. I was always at the right place at the wrong time, or the wrong place at the right time. I don't know. It's just I always felt kind of slightly out of step, just a few years too late, and a few years too soon with stuff.
Just a bit random, but do you remember any like the Cold War, like nuclear paranoia or any of that feeling?
Oh my God! With this completely, it was absolute fear growing up of imminent nuclear war. You were absolutely scared, because that was a reality that was over everybody's life. And it wasn't just that growing up, leaving school, you weren't going to get a job. That was absolutely 100% sure you were not going to get a job unless you had a certain amount of qualifications. Nuclear war was imminent, because you used to see it on the news all the time. And then especially, I remember very vividly, in 1985 with Libya, with Gaddafi, and I was on a school trip in Germany actually, and it was when they were bombing Tripoli, and the States were bombing Tripoli. And I just thought, this is when it's going to kick off, because Syria was involved, and if Syria were involved, then the Soviet Union would be involved, and nuclear war was imminent. And the trip was actually to the Rhineland. And in the Rhineland, they have these weird flood warnings that sound like nuclear sirens. And I didn't know that. And anyway, these sirens went off. And as a joke, our teachers went, get down, it started, get down.
They were joking?
On the floor of the bus. And we were I was petrified. They said, get down. Because this was all, we went on this school trip with this, and when I said goodbye to my mum, I thought, oh my God, this could be the last time, because it was imminent. Because it's kicking off in Tripoli now.
Yeah.
The war against Gaddafi. And I thought, and so if you're asking about the Cold War, that was fucking brutal. And I never forgave my teacher. Well, not that I liked them before that, but I never forgave them for that. And that was a horrible. But that's these are in the days when teachers could hit kids as well. So I was pretty much living in Victorian England, really.
Yeah.
So you could get, it was corporal punishment, which means if you did anything wrong at school, you get the cane, which is like a birch of wood that would be across your backside and over your hand. So if you did nothing, so it was a very militaristic as well.
So there was this big recession. It was post-war and a deindustrialization. There was also nuclear paranoia, and all those, they fed into the sense in England at the time that there was no future. And the sense of no future, I think it really fed into the youth movements or whatnot, the punk and the post-punk and all of those. So I wonder, maybe if the sense of no future, it plays a lot into people's lives. Maybe if there was more of a future, maybe you would have pursued a different life, maybe more quote-unquote normal life, maybe
being something else or someone else.
I know exactly what you mean, by the way. I mean, with the greatest will in the world, I couldn't have done that. I mean, my brother and my sister did do that, and they're extremely academic. I could not have done that because I was just very naughty. I couldn't help it, and I was certainly I didn't rebel against teachers. It was just because I just knew they weren't telling me anything, I mean, when I used to go into school, my teacher had like a bit of boiled egg on his jacket from his breakfast, and I was looking at him thinking, you're not going to tell me anything about my life, and you're an idiot, I wasn't informed, but by that stage as well, because the music I was listening to, I knew about Burroughs because of people. I knew about Bertolt Brecht. I knew about Jacques Brel. I knew about all these influences that my teachers weren't telling me, because they were telling me about the crop rotation in the 13th century or something. I don't. To this day, has been no use to me whatsoever. Whereas I had this complete separate life with music gave me. But of course, when you're that kid at school, not only do you separate yourself from your teachers, you also separate yourself from the majority of your peers as well, because of course they're not into that.
Yes.
You can't bring them on. They're not going to be into Lou Reed. They're not going to be into the Velvet Underground. They're not going to be into any of those things, which was all stuff I was into really early. I was into, I'm talking all pre-14, all of this stuff. I was, I knew all about all. And people thought, oh God, well, how's that? That's not possible. Of course, anybody of my age, it's completely the norm. It's completely the norm. And that's because there was literally nothing else. If you were, and this is exactly why Mute Records and Some Bizarre was so important for me as record labels, because, okay, you buy a soft sell record, but through soft sell you get to test departments or scraping fetus off the wheel, or or Swans. If you buy a Depeche Mode record, well, you get into Boyd Rice, or you'll get into Fat Gadget, or you'll get into all these other things, and and then it connects the dots, and then you form friendships outside of the school, and your connections become music connections, and these are people that you talk about, and you only need a couple of you. You're probably the same. Everyone's the same. You only need like 3 or 4 of you, which is not a movement. It's just a loose collective of friends and ideas, and those are the most important things, because it never gets diluted then.
Yes, in my talk with Martin Rev, when I asked him what's your advice to persist, he's like, all you need is one other person. It's like a party of one, a party of two.
He's so correct. Well, Martin Rev's so correct. And so, I always think of Martin Rev, funny enough, when I'm because I live part-time in New York, so my daughter's in New York. And whenever I'm in New York, I always think of Martin Rev said this amazing thing, which is still true. He said, you know what? The world can carry on. It can progress. But when you go down in the subway in New York City, you're still in 1970s New York. And he's so correct. The infrastructure of this, the richest city potentially on the planet, is so fucked. It's so dirty. It's so awful. And I just find it so comforting. You know, I love that. So I mean, he's true what he said. And that's the great thing maybe about when we talk about progress. And, you know, you were talking about no future. Well, at the moment, when big disasters happen, I never really felt like that. I always felt that something's good's got to come out of it. But I heard a great quote the other day, which is really true, is there really is at this point, there is no future now because the past won't stop happening. You know, and that's the truth. There's no future because we're just living in living in just regurgitating the past. There's no future because the past won't, and the past still keeps happening, and that's really true.
Yeah. And also, I feel like in that sense, in the no future feeling before, you could, in that really much more than now, there was also people were thinking what are possible futures. Whereas when you're now in some cities, okay, not so much, we at least in the Middle East, we still have, despite the decimation, there is an active way of thinking what is the future. But here, for example, where I am now in Montreal, I mean, the system has won. There is no, back then when there was also no future, there were also people squatting. You could never do that now. There was also, people are experimenting with ways of living but now the system has kind of won. You know, you go to the grocery store, you pay your rent or you buy your house.
Yeah, but we let it happen. We're all complicit in this, you know.
Yes, of course.
It's very, very, very soon we're going to be a cashless society. You know, that's what I mean. For instance, I tried to go out and find my local branch of a bank today because I just wanted to go in because I needed to do something very simple, and it's all closed down. I only have three, and the next one's like, you know, these type of things are kind of it's slowly happening in plain sight, but we're not seeing the way it's turning. You know, if you order something off the internet in any way, whether it be from anywhere, I don't care, it could be a pair of socks or whatever, we are complicit in the downfall of what's happening. That indirectly is because, you know, makes certain things richer.
I completely agree with you that we are all complicit, and we are all
But what I'm saying, what I'm saying now, interestingly, in New York, is, I don't know if it's interesting. I mean, but I definitely see in some sort of way, certain parts of the streets, especially in Manhattan, have been overtaken now with what people call the homeless, or, you know, the bottom tier of society, as people call them. You know, they're the forgotten people. You know, when you fall out of the system in America, you're fucked. And now a lot of people, these homeless people are roaming the streets, causing a bit of disruption because obviously they have massive mental health problems, and they're spoiling it for the other people. That I find that quite interesting at the moment, but I think it'll all come back in some sort of way. And then especially, I mean, New York was built to be a rich city. I mean, I'm using New York as an example because it's really a city without very much history, because it's a very new, young city, and it is the biggest. It's a centre for so much in the world. But it was. I don't know. It's very difficult, really. It was like you say. Yeah, I mean, art certainly will not get a good look in. Really, you know, it's going to be very, very difficult to do what you want unless you're completely somewhere. I mean, like Detroit, for instance. You know. Yeah. Like in Detroit, where it's very cheap and you can do it. You can buy 3 houses for $5,000 and you can live and work there, you know, but I don't know.
But I feel like, I don't know, but in our area, I feel like because of maybe the situation, like, for example, in Lebanon, after the explosion last year, a lot of people, we thought it was over because a lot of people's work and computers and everything was finished, you know,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of people thought that was the end of people's dreams. But actually what happened, I heard through my friends there, and I talk to all the time, is like people are actually creating a lot more. And I also have friends in Palestine. Just before the escalation of violence in Jerusalem, they made a song about Jerusalem, and it really became like the anthem of the resistance of all of the feelings. And like in days where I was really broken, I would listen to it for strength. And this video, their video now has like 12 million views on YouTube. Like it just exploded. And this is like, I think in some places there is still chance where like art can be the strength of people, you know? But also, I mean, maybe you feel different, but your music still has the element of disruption in it, right?
Well, it does. I mean, you know, maybe I'm completely different to other people. Well, I know I am, especially because, you know, I think 99.9% of people who make nightclub music. I mean, I'm loath to call it electronic music because
of course.
You know, but I think the majority of them accept this formula before they start making music. That's why during lockdown they became like headless chicken because they had no nightclubs to make their music for, and that's because before they start making music. So for me, like I was saying before, I always let things go. I'm not. I let my ideas go, and in some sort, I let my former self go as well. You know, and for me, it's just within me. I find it very, very easy to go about making music and, you know, put my influences into that because I know my influences are pure and correct and very, you know, actually, to be honest, now I'm becoming almost my own person with music, where before I was influenced by certain things and I used certain things and I brought certain things up, but now I'm almost becoming myself, which is great. And I know it's completely different to anybody else when they sit down to create music. I mean, this is the thing, you see, if you know, I think this is also very important thing. If you ask somebody, well, what are you doing? And they'll say, well, I'm writing music. And I said, well, you don't fucking write music. You create music. I mean, I'll quote Captain Beefheart, you know, Beefheart said, I don't read books because they're square, you know, because they're all written in straight lines, you know. I don't believe in lines. I believe in circles. And that's what I always loved about Beefheart. There was this complete abstract thinking about music to be, you know, oh, I'm writing music.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. I feel like I'm dancing with sound, especially like I have like a lot of buttons and stuff, and I don't know what any of them mean. Like I wouldn't be able to predetermine what this button does, or I want to raise this resonance, or I don't know what any of it means. And I almost don't want to know. All I do is I just mess around, like dancing with it. And sometimes I catch a flow. And it's only like in moments where I feel it's the time, like Mike said, there's a calling now to make it, but I don't like say, okay, I have to make music, or it's like, it also sometimes comes like on like, but I think, oh, like it's coming soon it's going to come to me, or I have to create music. And then when I do, I just feel like I'm dancing with sound.
Well, that's a really pure and beautiful way of explaining it. It's true, like Mike Banks said, it's a calling. You don't say, well, I'm going to sit down and write 60 tunes that will go in a certain genre of music that might fit onto Spotify or something. And that's what 99.9% of people do, by the way, you know.
And that's why I hosted you on my show, because exactly my show, I say Dreaming Live, is about being and creating, because not all art starts with being, but there are some people who work starts with their being, and like
you're completely correct. It's central. That's why I'll never take part in any of these things where they talk about equipment or the process of making music, because for me it's just fucking academic, and there's no poetry in academia.
Totally agree with you. I would never ask this question.
I find those things really, really, really quite annoying, Bill, that people are sitting there behind their backs of musical equipment and they want to talk about what they're doing and the process. Well, and that's just what, it's so dull. It's like, I'd rather, you know, and the funny thing, you know, it's like, for fuck's sake, you can't take apart what Lou Reed did when, you know, they did White Light, White Heat. It was like, you know, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely, and it's not ridiculous. It's polar opposite to what I enjoy. You know what? But millions of people love that, and and those are the people who are getting influence, and that's the way it's going to be heading, because academia is winning in some sort of way, and I find that the most disturbing part of anything. Well, you know, AI making computer. Yeah, everyone's getting excited about, oh, this isn't that great, but well, no, it's not. It's.
But honestly, I think that in the end, what will win through time is not that. That might win on the short term, but like, look at you after 30 years, and it's still standing, right? And like I said in the past, music like this and artists like yourself who are not deliberately conforming to entertainment, they might not have a strong peak, and but they'll have a slow but long term, and with that they also won't fall.
Well, it's true. I mean, the funny thing about it, no, you're quite right. I mean, like my last album, my last record, it's undjable. You can't DJ virtually any track on it. So it's basically a fuck you to anything nightclub culture and DJ culture. But oddly enough, with the pandemic came, I recalibrated what I thought I needed in life, and it was very interesting. I don't need to chase anything anymore. I don't need those extra things that I would have bought. It's made me become very frugal with money.
Yeah, me too. I'm really learning that, like, the more I have desire for material, the more I have to be enslaved to the system. And the way to buy my time and my dreams is to really minimize on these things.
Well, you're absolutely correct, because I'm the same as you. Actually, I have not got a record collection. I have nothing. I mean, I'm looking now. Actually, I mean, I don't think I've played a vinyl record for 2 years, maybe, only because my record player's broken. And I couldn't be bothered to fix it. And I was actually looking at my records the other day. I mean, I have maybe 300 now. Okay, literally. And I was looking at them, and there's a few of them I haven't played for nearly 35 years.
Yeah.
I mean, what use is this taking? What use is this? I mean, there's a few records there, and I've got the CD of it. I've probably played the CD in recent, but even then, I don't even play any of that anymore.
Absolutely. I recorded like somewhat of an album or whatever. Like I had 3 sessions where I knew they were coming, but at different times, and I finished something. But I feel like what I'm going to do is I'm just going to upload it on SoundCloud. Like I don't really want to go through like anything more than that. I just feel like for me, it's something I like to close my eyes to and listen to. Like in general, what I've been using music a lot is to close my eyes and travel places like in my mind. So just like if people can do that, that's it. I don't want people to have it physically, or I don't care really.
Well, you know what, this is the great thing about, if I'm to say one great thing about the here and now, which is really great, because I think you may have heard, like, the lead up time for actually putting the physical vinyl copy out now is such a long time. It's almost a year.
And I'm going to be 10 new me's by then.
Exactly. I mean, and then artistically, that's going to break any traditional artist's flow, because there's nothing as depressing as having your record come out a year later after you've created it. So the ultimate thing is now we have the means to upload onto SoundCloud, onto YouTube, and, in some sort of way they are being regulated and monetized as well for people. So, I'm not against any of that, by the way. I'm actually really, I've looked into it quite a lot recently. I've been quite enthused by it, because there's a style of music, I don't know, you may know about it. It's called drill music. It's a very kind of urban sort of music that was started in Chicago. It's a bit like trap music, but not that I'm into the music in any way, shape or form, but I'm interested in what these kids do, because I live in a part of South London. A lot of these kids make this music, but ultimately they make a video, which is really the important thing. So they do this, and I see them recording their videos, and then they upload them. All of a sudden, within no time at all, they've got 2 or 3 million views. And the economy of that is so indie, it's so punk, it's so DIY. I went, hang on, this is really interesting. So rather than like, we need to put a record out, I'm thinking, no, you don't need to put a record out. This is actually so punk. It's so punk, and uploading to SoundCloud or YouTube or whatever, it's pretty punk.
I love it. And I was also like thinking, maybe not now, but one day, because all these discussions I'm having, like they're kind of leading into kind of a children's book about like a girl who's on an assembly line. You could see her here. And,
is that your daughter?
No, that's me. I don't have a daughter.
Oh no, wow, that's brilliant. So
I have a strong inner child, because I think like I had to protect it, growing up with all of
Well, I'll tell you something quite interesting. The worst thing about my childhood was when I became 18 and I thought I had to grow up because I had an amazing childhood, because I was just, I didn't want to grow up, and I still haven't done that. You know, in all honesty, I'm still 18. You know,
I think I'm like 9. Like I wrote, it's not really a poem, but I joke that it's a poem. It's just 3 words. To my inner child, hang on. It was, I think, after the Lebanese explosion, because, you know, it's always, reality always tries to break in. It's like, no, I'm going to.
That's beautiful. And actually, the way that you write is so lucid. And when I read what you wrote, I mean, it does, whether you know, I don't know whether you mean to do that or not, but it really does impact quite deeply on what it did on me. And then I thought, well, Jesus Christ, am I going to be right for this? Because I certainly don't want to be negative. I don't want to be frivolous. I just want to be very direct in the way that I think about certain things. But, you know, you do. I think people like you who think in this way, and I do as well. You know, I think we need to be cherished a lot more, because
we are a soul family, like Martin Rev said.
We are a soul family. It's very true. You know, it is very, very true. And it's just, yeah.
You know, I actually say I hate house and techno, but I love everything in between.
Oh my God, me too. I mean, I hate it. I mean, I don't like.
But I hate the in between. You know, you're in the in between, like where it's like somehow there's a magical in between. Not many people are in the in betweens, but there are the people who are not navigating the assembly line of my children's book.
Yeah, I love it. It's so, no, you're completely correct. Because there's such a great opportunity, especially with lockdown, for people to show the world what they're worth. And you know what? No, very few people did. They made the same old bullshit, because hanging on to something, they can't let it go. So when you say, when it comes back to the new normal, the normal has gone what we knew, and that is great. We have to embrace new things. We have to throw away everything we loved before and start from new. But that's what I've always done. It comes back to, that's why I'm not a record collector. I don't hold on to things. I mean, I always say this thing quite funnily to some of my friends. You know, there's something so heroic about a 16-year-old's record collection. It's so heroic. It's full of optimism. It's full of inspiration. It's fantastic. That's those same records in the hands of a 50-year-old. They're just sad dreams, and they smell like old men. You know, you can't bring it with you. You can't bring it with you, and it's just.
And you have to let yourself transform.
You've got to transform. You have to transform in some way, and it's just in a very simplistic terms, it's just, you're a new person. You're not that person that attached to those records.
Yeah,
you know?
And what I wanted to say, so about when we were saying about like how to make a release, like, because I want to write this book which is about all of these discussions that we're having, but like, and it's always in my head. So I thought maybe I'll like start not with a small like booklet, and start the book, even if it's not like just some ideas of it, and start like putting it out slowly. But maybe I'll put like one time, if I have something that I want to do more than just upload it on SoundCloud or something, I'll put it in a little USB in this booklet, but more so I can actually get started on the imaginary book that I have. And I'll put some music in a little USB, and they can use the USB with anything else after. And like
well, this is the thing is, you know, this whole process that's going on in your brain, and this internal conversation you're having with yourself about this project is so important to you as a person. It's fundamental, you know, and these are really great ideas, because what else are other people thinking about? Well, we know what people are thinking about. You can look on Twitter today. You know what they're thinking about, and they're not thinking about these things. But then makes me sad, because these people, and I'm sure loads of your friends as well, are living through such extremely difficult times, where I hear people moaning about they don't like the type of milk they got in their latte this morning in New York and stuff. And you just, well, you know what? There's something really wrong with the world, and maybe we do need a big shake-up that probably is coming, you know.
You know, I mean, the whole post-punk ethos and all that, it was about shake-up, and what you're doing, it does shake up, don't you think? Like the aesthetic that you have, for me, it's about shake-up, but also it has like very strong, because some techno is so formulaic that it's almost like the system. It's like the assembly, like boom, boom, and then it's just like there is nothing, no soul. But I don't know how you do it, but there's something also very like ethereal, like spirits, and I don't know.
When we did the music we did in the early mid-90s, it's like I said, it had no tradition at that particular point. We were making music that was very abrasive. It had massive mistakes and it wasn't edited. It certainly wasn't produced in anything that you would say was...
but not just that, but even today, the aesthetic and stuff, there's still, like you said, I mean...
But this is the point, you see, because now a lot of these people, their influences have been in the nightclubs. You know, who they've been influenced by DJs who have got absolutely no influencers. You know, there's absolutely, you know, there's no way that you can. I don't know.
Okay, exactly. I get it. Yeah, yes, and this is again, this is why I also wanted to talk about England and all of that, and that shaped your sound. It's like a postmark.
Well, we're very fortunate in English, but it's in our blood, you see. Where, you know, maybe in Germany as well, Germany and France, of course they had punk, but the revolution didn't really happen there. It didn't really shake up their system as much. In Germany, techno and that was really, I guess, their liberation. But within that, if you're going to be informed by the nightclub, you're not going to get very far. So I'm not surprised we're in the state we are in now, where we've got a whole load of DJs who are not really informed by music, but they're informed by their agents, they're informed by fame, they're informed by their next gig, they're informed by the size of their USB stick. That's what it is. You know, it's about playlists, it's about nothing, and in very many ways, it's the future. They're robots, really. You know, and it's just it's the very bad. But that's why for me it's so easy, because me and Surgeon in particular, I very feel that we are the last of that particular line. I mean, you know, we did know Coil. You know, I mean, Peter Christophers and Sleazy named British Murder Boys. You know, he named it. He said, "Oh, that's." As we said, Sleazy, Pete, what do you think of the name British Murder Boys? He went, "Oh, darling, I love it. Obviously.
Yeah. I actually for me, this series, I want to afterwards try to do some artists from that, even maybe talk to Dan Miller or some people. I don't know how I'm going to put it. It might not come out. Maybe I'll start with it and then go back, or maybe I'll go back and then start. But for me too, that's how I saw it. That's how I dreamt it.
Well, Daniel's amazing. I mean, Daniel's a good friend of mine. You know, I mean, the thing about me and Daniel, because I kind of, you know, I suggested him to start DJing again, and he's been so kind and really always said, "Well, Regis got me back into DJing."
Oh, cute.
The funny thing is, though, my relationship with Daniel is just very, very. We go and watch the football together. You know, it's just really, really weird, but I never ever for 1 second of my time being in his company do I not know that I'm with Daniel Miller. You know, because not only is he the greatest, he's the most congenial person you could ever wish to meet, because he pretty much invented everything that was really good about British independent music. Daniel Miller pretty much invented. I mean, okay, you've got Ivo at 4AD who did some of the great stuff. Of course, you've got Jeff Travis with Rough Trade, but Daniel really brought a lot of the misfits together, and lots of people owe Daniel Miller a massive, massive debt, because they wouldn't be here. Though, you know, there's absolutely no way Nick Cave would be working today if it wasn't for Daniel Miller. And Nick Cave can think anything different of that, but that's completely 100% fucking true. 100% true.
So hopefully I will talk. I think I will. I want to contextualize.
I could talk about Daniel all day, because he's just the greatest and he's just the nicest person. And he's, you know, they say, you know, you never meet your heroes, but luckily I've met quite a few of my heroes in a professional sense, and they've all been brilliant.
And also for me, this show, I actually don't really promote it much, or people tell me you should approach this or that. For me, I feel like I'm also actually someone that I was seeing, and okay, we're still very good friends, but he once said it's our job to pass on to the next generation. We're so fucked that we just have to pass on to the next generation some messages.
Potential. Well, if you can inspire me and get me to talk, if you can inspire me, I'm sure you can inspire anybody else. Because I don't do this normally. I certainly don't do these things if they don't have any merit to it. But I can see massive merit to this and what you're doing. So that's.
This is for future generations. I feel I don't want now a million. It's for the future. It can be an artifact for the future. They will have David Lynch, Martin Rev, all of those people.
Well, you see, that's an amazing archive to have, because then that really is something to pass on. I mean, oddly, it's really interesting you said that, because I only came back to the UK yesterday. I mean, I flew in from New York, and the day before I left, I went to see Derek Jarman exhibition in one of the galleries in the Lower East Side, and it was amazing because I was there with all this amazing art, and I managed to sit down and watch the Derek Jarman film Blue in its entirety with massive sound, pretty much on my own in the theatre. It was just so everything, and I thought, you know what, this is something that will be here forever and ever. Derek Jarman's filmmaking will be always revered for centuries to come in some sort of way. Whereas there could be some moron on the internet now with 100 million people patting his back for some piece of shit, nothing work that they've done that's irrelevant.
Yeah, I think we covered what I wanted. And
you're such a ray of sunshine. You're such a really nice. Honestly, because I can remember when we were in Montreal, and you're such a good person. You really are. There's very few people. I think you know that anyway about yourself.
Thank you so much. I love talking to you.
Well, I hope it was useful and not just...
It was very beautiful, and I promise you that it was like, I am happy. I'm happy that, I'm happy that I have something from your work to leave.
Oh my! Well, you know what? If there's anyone could do it, it's you, and I'm happy to give those words. And because I just know that it's in good hands, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate you to look after those words and present them in a way that you know it's been broken.
I'll make sure.
Oh, brilliant! Well, look, thank you so much for getting up early and do whatever you do now. Coffee, I don't know what you do, but yeah, good.
And much love and much love, and I hope to see you soon. Really hope.
Definitely, we are in the new world. See you later.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Okay, that's it, my episode with Regis. Stay tuned because there's really incredible episodes to come. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful day.